What indeed. And now the bread dispute. On December the 13th last year, Roy Hattersley announced that he was going to abolish the government's 22.5% limit on the amount of discount shops and supermarkets could negotiate from the big three bakers. Effectively what that meant was that the government were no longer setting a minimum wholesale price for bread. The big three bakers weren't happy at the thought of a price-cutting war, but it was not they, but their bread delivery men who defied the government's new order. The United Road Transport Union said they would not deliver bread to shops that sold it below the union's imposed minimum price. Yesterday, Roy Hattersley called all sides together to try and find a solution, but none emerged. I wonder if Joan will have any better luck now. Joan.
Well, with me is a representative from the supermarkets, one from the small shops, one from the National Consumer Council and one from the Bread Delivery Men's Union. Ian McLaurin, I'd like to start with you. As Managing Director of Tesco, can you tell me if you've been forced to raise the price of your standard loaf?
Yes, we have. I think we want to go back to Roy Hattersley. He made some statements, or was reported to have made some statements, saying that the large loaf would go down as much as 8p. This was a wild and untrue statement. There was never any chance of that sort of reduction being made through supermarkets, and this caused the problems with certain unions. And I can understand their immediate concern with that sort of publicity.
Are you, though, selling bread everywhere at the price that you want to sell it at?
Not everywhere, no. There are certain areas in the country where, unfortunately, we have to sell at 18p, otherwise we don't get deliveries. Our view at Tesco on this is quite clear. Bread is a staple commodity, and we feel we should have it for our customers. But we don't like the way the unions are acting in this case.
Joan McIntosh, what's your comment on that?
Well, I'd like to make the point of principle first on this, that consumers in general, consumers everywhere throughout the country, regard with a sense of outrage the fact that unions, or indeed shops maybe, using their power to exercise a sort of retail price maintenance. This to us is absolutely unacceptable. We are used to having prices influenced by droughts, by floods, by common agricultural policy, by government policy, what have you, but that it should be used as a counter in what, in effect, is an industrial dispute seems to us totally unacceptable, and we are looking for a very early solution to this.
Mr. Jackson Moore, you've heard the National Consumer Council's version and, in fact, opinion on what's going on. As General Secretary of the Bread Delivery Men's Union, that's URTU, why did you say in January that you wouldn't handle loaves selling for less than 17 pence and now 18 pence?
Of course, we didn't say it in January, we said it in December, because we were attempting to get the Minister to meet us before Christmas, a week before Christmas, to discuss the whole problem. At that point in time, I'm quite sure that had he have met us and the industry, we probably between us would have found a solution long before the 4th of January. The one question that was asked then, and the one question that still hasn't been answered, is the very simple one as to how you can reduce the price of bread when Mr. Hattersley and the industry accept that there is only 1/2p profit in it at the point of manufacture, without making the company go bankrupt or without escalating the price of bread. Then we just don't know the answer to it. Mr. Hattersley obviously doesn't know the answer to it, otherwise he would have told us.
You said, though, in December that you were trying to protect, in fact, the small retailers because there was a fear, you know, that they wouldn't sell as much bread as before. Are you trying to protect them?
But of course, and you know, this is another problem. Yesterday, for example, and I'm not going to refer to that meeting at all, but a statement that was reiterated yesterday that Mr. Hattersley had had correspondence from small shopkeepers complaining about the union's attitude. We had to point out to him yet again that we have had absolutely scores and scores of letters and hundreds of telephone calls and, incidentally, even money from the small shopkeeper who are saying that without bread they would be out of business. They want it for the same reason the supermarket wants it. Every housewife wants a loaf every day. She goes into the shop, and having got in the shop, she buys the other commodities.
I'll just go now to Dick Branston, because you do represent small shops. Now, do you need protecting in the way that Mr. Moore says so?
No, I'm sorry to say that whilst we're grateful for union concern in this matter, we don't feel that we need this protection.
Why?
I don't think any of our retail shops are going out of business over this particular problem, we shall have to go on selling bread as an essential service to the community. There are many things we don't like about the way in which bread is marketed at the moment, but we're not in a position that we're going to go out of business over the present problem.
Could I come in, Joan, here? Because we've heard that retailers are being accused of putting the price up. Now, let's get one thing very clear. We never want to put the price up. We at Tesco are instrumental in beating RPM, and we are there to serve our customers and bring price down. What we are against is the union, and it is one union here. Don't forget there are 2 other unions that are perfectly happy to deliver bread to our stores at any price we like to sell it. So it's only one union out of 3. And Mr. Jackson's union is the one that is saying, no, it's got to be 18p. What we are saying as an organisation is, let's get back to free bargaining so we at Tesco can give the best possible value we can in our stores. That's what we want.
No, what he's actually saying isn't that at all, because he also won't answer the question, how can he get a better deal from the manufacturer when he knows the manufacturer has only 1/2p? If he gets at Tesco a bigger discount, then that in itself has got to put the price up. And there's a lot of kidology about this question.
Mr. Jackson,
and the other question that was raised was, of course, by our gentleman from the VG organisation. And he says he represents the small shops. What he really represents is the very mini market, because this is a supermarket type of setup,
well, the small
rather than a small shop. But the real small shops are interested in our activity.
Can I come in on this, actually, because I think the consumer has an interest in all shops, We shop around. What is not generally appreciated, I think, by Mr. Jackson Moore and his union is that the individual consumer is not where she shops is not dictated entirely by the price of bread. Where she can find bread cheap, she will go and get bread cheap. But she's not going to take an expensive bus journey or spend a great deal on petrol in order to buy a quantity of bread and to buy all her shopping in the same shop. She will go to the corner shop. Nobody values the small independent shop more than the consumer. If we thought they were threatened, we would in fact be side by side with the union.
Well, can I just tell one point
I'd just like to put a question to you, because isn't really your concern about your union members and the commission that they're paid, and a fear in fact that because the smallest shops won't be selling so much bread, that some of your drivers won't have as many deliveries, and perhaps a genuine danger of their losing their jobs?
Actually, 2 questions you've put, not one. And incidentally, I'm amazed of your lack of knowledge in asking the first question, because even the press got that one right. The employers, oh yes they did.
It's
the
been
employers
said everywhere
assured
that could be your main concern.
Look, the employers assured a guarantee 5 weeks before January the 4th that no man would have a wages involvement in anything that materialised as a result of the prices order. So the wages element of it does not exist. That's a total red herring that you are throwing in for the benefit of Thames Television.
No, I'm trying to clear it up, please, Mr. Moore, because this is something that's been said.
Then yes, there is an interest in redundancy, because very obviously if the small shops go out of business, then they're going to require fewer salesmen to go around to service them. There is a big redundancy problem also in the fact that if the supermarket chain get bigger discounts from a profit that isn't there, then at least one of the big manufacturers will very rapidly go out of business with a huge redundancy situation.
Does Mr. Jackson Moore not regarded as slightly arrogant with respect to take upon himself and his union the responsibility for guarding the interests of the small shops? And indeed, in early statements, he said that he was doing this on behalf of the consumers. This has not been said recently. But where the small shops feel capable of fighting their own battles, where consumers feel capable of fighting their own battles, why must there be union intervention in order to protect us from ourselves?
This is a typical, Consumers Association remark, because let me get this point in.
No, sorry, well you two have had a good chat. I want
facts.
Mr. Branston to say something now, because we've been talking about you. Now you represent the smaller shop, perhaps not all the smallest, but in the VG chain. Tell us what you think.
Well, I think the discussion shouldn't concentrate really on the union situation here, because if there's a nigger in the bread pile, it may not necessarily be the unions. I think the big problem here is, first of all, government intervention, which has created so many problems. Now, one can understand to some extent that when public money is involved through subsidy, the government feels that it has to intervene and has to bring in special controls. But the fact of the matter is, of course, that in this very complex and intricate structure of bread distribution, marketing generally, the government intervention has been, to coin a mixed metaphor, a white elephant in a china shop. And the best thing that we could look for, all of us, consumers and distributors certainly, and I believe in the long run union and manufacturer, is let's the government get out of it and let's the union and manufacturers sort this thing out, which does need a lot of sorting out.
Mr. McLaurin, I'd like to ask you whether you think Mr. Hattersley was right in lifting this restriction on discounts from the bread manufacturers to shops.
No, I don't think he was. I don't like government intervention in basic trading, and that in fact is what has been going on, firstly with Shirley Williams when she put the limit on it, and now with Roy Hattersley with this other scheme he's bought in. It is basically wrong. The publicity that Roy Hattersley got when he said bread is coming down 8p, that was terrible publicity and it was wrong. He's since denied making that statement. But I don't think Mr. Jackson Moore and his unions would be sitting here today, and we wouldn't have the problem today had it not been for Mr. Hattersley and his statements to start with.
Joe McIntosh, do you think Mr. Hattersley was right?
Well, it's curious, isn't it, that on the one hand he's criticised for excessive government intervention, on the other hand he's criticised for what in effect is a relaxation of government intervention. The time is coming in July when price control will probably disappear. The subsidy is quite likely to disappear.
What Mr. Hattersley said is we'll allow the trade to negotiate discounts, but that has got to be reflected in lower prices. What we are saying as a company is that is totally wrong, I believe. Let us negotiate with the bakers. Let us negotiate the best possible discount we can, so then we can reflect that in the best possible prices for Tesco customers. That's what our business is. Mr. Jackson Moore's business, I believe, and the unions are strong in this, he's got to look after his members. But I honestly don't think that he wants to get involved in the negotiations between the trade and
another word then from Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, Mr. Hattersley changed the law because he felt that bread manufacturers could sell bread cheaper to the shops. Do you think they could?
The simple answer to the question is that had he have taken the trouble to consult people, he would have found out that it is possible, but not by the means that he has adopted when he accepts the profit margin, which I won't go into again. But you know, also you ought to look at his scheme, because his scheme tells the shopkeepers, supermarkets particularly, you can negotiate 100% discount. Now, you know, anybody with the slightest bit of a brain at all knows you cannot take 100% of anything. All we can have is an industry completely raped and no industry at all with that sort of system. And I still put the question back to our colleagues here, but particularly to Mr. Hattersley, how do you reduce the price of bread with a halfpenny profit margin without putting the price of bread up? And we are keenly interested in maintaining a stable price.
How do you think that can be done? What do you want to see happen?
Well, we've got to find some method of changing the forms of distribution, probably, or even of manufacture. We've got to find some different system with the supermarkets and the small stores. And the small stores only get, you know, 2.5 pence.
I'm going to take you on now. You've had your final say. Okay. Quick comment. What do you want to see happen next?
We want to see the free operation of the market uninfluenced by union force and union intervention.
Right. Mr. McLaurin.
Let the bakers and the unions sort this out, and quick. Let Tesco go back and get the best possible discounts for our customers, because that's what we're in business for.
Mr. Branston.
The strange thing is that as far as VG retailers are concerned, we were very close to getting good agreement from plant bakers immediately before Shirley Williams intervened. If we hadn't had government intervention, our retailers would have been in a very much better position, and can still be, if we're allowed to have free market exercising its normal flow of control.
And dearer bread. You've got to have dearer bread. If you have bigger discounts, there's no other way that you can take a bigger discount, and you've just told us now that you had already negotiated one. Tesco said, give us a chance and we'll negotiate one. And the only end result is a dearer loaf for the housewife. Now let people find a way out of that.
A wider range
and the
of
Consumers
prices,
Association ought to consult the parties involved in a problem before they come out with statements, because they have never yet bothered to check what the problem is all about.
That's not even
Okay,
correct,
thank you
Mr.
all
Jackson
very
Moore.
much indeed. It's time to end now. And in fact, that's all from us on Money Go Round.